wrap up this oil question, and then we have one last segment. We can go back to the space program and something more hopeful. This British clique around Sir Richard Branson of Virgin Airlines and the rest of his group of companies, they produced something you can get online. It's called the Oil Crunch of 2016, or is it 2010, or whatever it is. But a lot of these people, like Colin Campbell, have tried peak oil every decade for the past decade, or for the past 50 years. They've been doing this periodically. And what they're attempting to try to do is to improvise a new intergovernmental panel on climate change, and to essentially pull this out of their noses at this late date. They've got part of this group is a guy from Barclays Capital who says that we'll be back to $140 a barrel oil by 2015. The Bank of America Merrill Lynch guy says $150 a barrel by 2014. And one of the more extreme Malthusians, friends of Sir Richard Branson, a guy called Leggett of the Solar Century, $150 per barrel may be optimistic. Gosh. Can we go back to the summer of 2008 when oil got to a bit above $140 a barrel, gasoline at $5 a gallon? This is not a matter of demand. This is not a matter of supply. This is a matter of speculation. And the London ICE exchange, the Intercontinental Exchange, using indexes and other forms of derivatives for speculation in the oil market. The oil had gone up from about $25 a barrel in 2003 up to about $140 a barrel plus in the summer of 2008, not based on demand, based on speculation. And this was done primarily by Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. My back-of-the-envelope calculation holds true that if you were paying $5 a gallon for gasoline in August to September of 2008, right before the banking panic reached its preliminary interim peak, you were paying $1 to Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, just those two alone. And the fact that the price then collapsed to slightly below $40 a barrel by the end of the year of 2008 had, again, nothing to do with demand, nothing to do with supply, but everything to do with the fact that speculative positions based on derivatives were being liquidated by investment banks that were desperate to raise cash because they were threatened by bankruptcy in the short term, meaning Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, but also the entire school of hedge funds around them, J.P. Morgan, and the rest of them. You notice in these reports, speculation plays no role. And on the other hand, when you look at the world economy, the gross, overwhelming, salient fact is speculation, especially in energy. And the way you can deal with this stuff, right, you can re-regulate these markets. You can have margin requirements of 100%. You can distinguish between speculators, hedgers, and end users, and keep the speculators. You can have position limits for the speculator. You can do all sorts of things, and these have been done in the past and should be done again. Tax derivatives is the first step in doing it. We also have to go back and remember that the oil crisis of 1973-74 was a fraud. It was essentially not an event of supply and demand, but simply a market event. Again, exactly the same thing using somewhat more primitive tools. The infamous meeting near Stockholm in the Saltsjöbaden Hotel during the course of the year of 1973, well before the Kippur War and the Arab oil boycott, was essentially a series of presentations about how to create a rise in the price of oil of 400% at that point. And it was done as a means of saving the residual reserve currency role of the U.S. dollar. By 72, 73, after the collapse of Bretton Woods, the world was filled with dollars, at that time a great deal of liquidity. So how do you soak them up? You raise the price of oil by 400%, concentrate that in Saudi Arabia, and then have that lent to the Chase Manhattan Bank. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So speculation never discussed, and just pure political manipulation of these things. The meeting in the Salzburg Hotel was that of the Bilderberg group, and that was during the course of 1973. The other aspect, what's with the technology in these oil areas? Look at Iran. Iran, obviously a major producer. What's their story? They're under a regime of crippling sanctions when it comes to trying to get modernization of their oil technology. They don't even have refineries. Forget that. But in terms of just production of crude, they are under the gun of 3 rounds of U.S.-backed sanctions already. Let's look across at Iraq. What's with them? Is their production a little bit less than one might expect? Yeah, well, we've had sanctions all during the course of the 1990s. We had a war first, the first Gulf War, and then we had 12, 13 years of sanctions, and after that we had more warfare, more chaos, and some increase or restoration of production after that. If we look at Russia, we would have to say, look at Russia. They've been under the COCOM list, the embargo on any kind of modern technology until 1991-92, and everybody knows that the COCOM list, the technological embargo or high-tech embargo against Russia, lives on in certain informal ways, so that you could say that the ability of Russia to develop Siberia and other related oil areas has been severely constricted by forms of economic warfare. So you're not dealing with a market. You're not dealing with supply and demand. You're dealing with speculation, political manipulation, fake events created essentially by speculators and market players, and then this other thing, the fact that the access to modern technology has been severely constricted. Despite all this, we're told that one of Obama's czars, Glenn Sweetnam, I guess we can call him the peak oil czar. This is the top official at the Department of Energy who deals in this stuff. Up until now, the U.S. Department of Energy has hesitated to embrace the crackpot thesis of peak oil. Rather, the prevailing view at the Department of Energy has been that of an undulating plateau. In other words, you reach a plateau, but it goes up and down. It's like rolling hills along a plateau. But with Glenn Sweetnam, the current czar, as soon as Obama came into office in February of 2009, they began getting more and more Malthusian, more and more pessimistic. So now Glenn Sweetnam says that we can't have a significant decline in world oil production between 2011 and 2015 if investment is not forthcoming. Well, thanks for the if, czar Glenn Sweetnam. Who might prevent such investments from being made? How about people that are engaging in economic warfare against Iran and in a certain covert way against Russia and against other key oil producers? So this entire argument is shot through with fallacies and with fraud. The other thing to add about this is that the U.S. policy is based on denying people access to oil. We can go back to National Security Memorandum 200, I believe, of 1974, under Kissinger, where he says the growth of population of third world countries is going to lead to their consuming of our oil, which is under their territory. So, again, a new fraud being readied, this time switching from global warming to peak oil, and we'll be back in a minute.